Earlier this year, when our exams had finished, my friends and I decided that we would go clubbing to blow off some steam and to celebrate. The club we decided to go to was one with 3 floors, with each floor playing a different style of music. So as usual, as soon as we were inside, we decided to split up. As it was post-exam season, the club was packed to capacity. So even though a few of us headed to each floor together, we soon got separated. I'm not sure how long I had been dancing for, but eventually, it was so hot, I felt as if I were going to pass out. So I began elbowing my way through the dancing swarm, towards the air-conditioned seating area near the back of the 2nd floor. Obviously, no actual seats were free, so I just stood in the alcove and tried to cool down. One of my friends, Noor, is Muslim, and so for religious reasons she does not drink, and she definitely does not hook up. She would literally only go to clubs in order to spend time with us and dance. That night she had joked that we were the teetotal twins, as I was banned from drinking due to just finishing up a course of antibiotics. I'm a medic, so I know not to cheat, as I'm not exactly a fan of contributing to the rise of superbugs. With all of this in mind, you can see why it would have caught my attention when I saw her being piggybacked by a tall guy with messy light-coloured hair, who was built like a rugby player. I called her name, but obviously, I could have been screaming directly in her ear and she wouldn't have heard me at the club. I ran after them and grabbed the guy's t-shirt, yanking him to a halt. He turned around, and as he did, I saw Noor's head flop back. She was completely out of it. "Is she alright?" I yelled, pointing at her. The guy laughed and nodded. Yeah. She's just had a few too many and passed out." I can't quite describe the feeling that hit me at that instant. The closest I can get is the jarring jolt of panic that rips through you when you wake up in the morning, check your clock, and realize you slept through your alarm. Noor didn't drink. Does she want water or something?" I said. "Nah, it's cool. I'll just take her back to mine and let her sleep it off there." "I really think she needs water first," I said. At this, the guide takes a step away from me and said that she was a total lightweight and how it happened all the time. "It's alright. She's my girlfriend," he said. I just stared at him for a second and wondered what the hell I should do. I knew I couldn't fight this guy as he was about 3 times my size, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let him take my friend anywhere. But in the time it would have taken me to explain what was going on and ask for help from strangers, he'd be gone, and probably have taken Noor with him. I tried to stall him for time. "Listen, mate, I'm a medic, and she looks seriously dehydrated. Why don't you sit down with her for a second and I'll go get a glass of water?" "I only live round the corner. It's cool," he replied. "Let me just try and wake her up before you leave, okay?" He hesitated for a second, but finally nodded, and together we managed to persuade someone to move, so that he could set her down. "Wait here, okay?" He just nodded. I set off as though towards the bar, but as soon as I was obscured by the crowd, I made a beeline for the entrance to the 2nd floor, where I knew there was always a bouncer on guard. I tried not to sound completely hysterical, as I yelled over the music to him that my friend had been drugged, and some guy was trying to kidnap her. He told me to calm down, and looked at me as though I were completely insane. Screaming, "I'm sober," at someone is probably one of the least convincing things to say, in order for them to believe what you're saying is true. I was in a panic, as I realized I shouldn't have left Noor alone with that guy. "Please just come with me." Something must have gotten through to him, as he decided to follow me to check it out. When we got there, Noor was slumped forward, exactly where I had left her, and completely unconscious. But the guy was nowhere to be seen. I gave the bouncer the best description I could, but considering the lighting, I wasn't able to make out much more than the hair, his t-shirt, and the fact that he was 6 foot tall and hench. He could have been anyone, and he's still out there. The next day, she woke up with a splitting headache and only fuzzy recollections of even going out that night. She has no idea what happened, no idea who the guy had been, and no idea how to thank me for saving her. If you see a girl who looks completely out of it, or utterly shit-faced, being carried out of a club, or leaving a club with a guy, I don't care how silly or cock-blockery you feel, please, please, just take a second to make sure she's okay. So, I grew up in Las Vegas. I'd moved there when I was in 2nd grade. I was around 7 or so, and my mother was working at some sort of motorcycle repair shop in Arizona that just wasn't paying the bills at all. So, she jumped at the offer of a new job. Fast forward about 5 years, I'm in middle school, and my brother and I were almost exactly 2 years apart. I was about to turn 12, so he was around 10 at the time. My mother, being quite low on the seniority list, was forced to work late nights. That left me and my brother home alone after school more often than not. Our nights were usually pretty uneventful, usually consisted of us avoiding whatever homework we were assigned, warming up leftovers in the microwave, and watching whatever sparked our interest on TV, which was either WWE wrestling or some kind of cartoon. We usually ended up in bed before our mum got home, but occasionally we'd wait up for her. One night, or I suppose one afternoon considering it was still light, everything was pretty normal. My brother sat on the living room floor, engulfed in whatever was on the TV, and I was using my mother's desktop computer, leveling up my character on RuneScape. Then there was a rather aggressive knock at the door, which was very odd. I was sort of an outcast child. I didn't have too many friends, nor did my brother. Not only that, we lived in what you would consider a senior living community. My mother was the youngest adult there, and was around her mid-30s. My brother, being too short to reach the peephole, doesn't move, only slightly reacts and looks at me. I get up off the computer chair and make my way to the front door to glance out the peephole. I see a man in a black ski mask staring at me through the peephole. It definitely didn't seem real. It sort of seemed like something from a cliche movie, as if he were dressed to rob a bank. I was immediately scared shitless, and I obviously didn't bother asking who it was. I silently stepped away, shut off the TV, grabbed my brother on our small black Pomeranian, and ran towards my bedroom. Once we were safely hidden in my closet, I informed him of what I saw outside. He didn't say much, but was visibly shaken, and just quietly stood there holding our little dog. I slid the tiny flip phone our mum lent us for emergencies from my pocket and dialed 911. I whispered to the operator the entirety of the call, and I didn't think the man had left considering the knocks persisted after we left the living room. Yet somehow, she understood me and sent an officer over. Immediately after the call ended with the operator, I dialed for our mother. I explained everything to her, and she ended up leaving work early and came home around the time that the police had as well. I'm not sure what deterred him of pursuing further, but of course, the man was gone by the time they both had arrived. The officer was very clearly not taking any of it seriously, most likely thinking that these two young boys were just paranoid from staying home alone. It was probably just a young man playing a joke on a friend, they thought. However, Like I stated before, we live in a senior living community. Who could he be possibly playing a joke on? His dear grandmother? He then gave my brother and I stickers, as if that would console our nerves after seeing some masked man pounding on our door. Fortunately, I never saw the stranger after that. However, after the experience, my house did get broken into, as well as my car 3 times. Thankfully, none of us were present when any of this took place, since my family and I moved out of the state and installed a security system. Nevertheless, I hope we never meet again. I was 16 years old when this happened to me. I am a female. It was just me and my dad in my house, and since he's a businessman that travelled frequently, I was left home alone quite often. First of all, I'm going to try and best describe to you the layout of our house, so that you can better understand my situation. My house is pretty small, since it is just my father, my dog, and myself living in it. There's a long hallway full of full-sized windows, separating my father's room and my own. Our dog loved to look out of these windows, so we always kept them open enough for her to look out of. I'm in the last room at the end of the hallway. In between the 2 rooms is my bathroom and spare bedroom. The rest of the layout is irrelevant. It was around 11 PM when the worst night of my life began. My dad was passed out in bed after a long day, and I was mindlessly dancing around my house getting ready for bed. I hopped into the shower, not knowing what was coming next, and of course, like a cringeworthy horror movie, my dog starts aggressively barking up a storm. With my excessive knowledge of how these things turn out for the girls in the movies, I go out to explore. I head to my room to throw some clothes on whilst my dog is still shitting a brick. Months before, I'm not sure how, I managed to break my door handle, so you no longer have to twist the knob to open it. All it needs is a small push. Scared shitless, I barely managed to put on a shirt when my dog opened the door. I looked to see her enter my room whilst in the midst of barking, and that's when I saw it. There's only one window that has vision to the opening of my room, and in the corner of it, I saw a face so seemingly sinister that I can still see it years later. It was dark, so I took a second to comprehend what I just saw, but when I finally realized it, I screamed. My father owns a lot of guns, so when he heard me scream bloody murder, he ran out with a pistol, and he asked me what happened, and I could barely express what I saw. He ran outside to see the man was still near. We stood out there for a minute scanning the area. A man was casually strolling towards us from the opposite direction about 100 yards away. I knew it was him. I got that feeling in my stomach that you can't mistake. It was as if he was trying to cover up where he'd been by coming from a different direction. That bastard didn't fool me though. You better stay the hell away from my daughter. Do you see what I have here? Do you know what this does? My father yelled, holding up a gun into the air. I swore he could have shot. The man brushed off these threats easily. Go die in a hole, you old man, he said. My father then went back inside and went back to bed as if nothing had happened. But I couldn't sleep a wink. I kept thinking he was going to come back and hurt me because of the threats to him. We called the police next morning, and they came and scoped out our house. They looked around the house trying to calm me down, but I was still pretty shaken up. He went to the front yard first, and that's when he saw it. In front of the windows in the long hallway, there were small bushes, and from this window you could see my room very clearly. If he tried to tell me the news without making me more upset, he failed. There were indents in the dirt right in front of the window. That meant that he knew he needed to look there, and it seemed like he had been here more than once, because of the broken pieces of bush and the divots on the ground. Turns out he was our old neighbour's nephew, and he'd been staying there for a few months. He was never arrested, never got in trouble, and probably got barely more than a slap on the wrist. But at least he's gone now. How long had he been watching me? I'll never know. All I know is I keep my door shut, and I never keep the blinds open. So creepy nephew that had been watching me for God knows how long, let's not meet again.
Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.